Okay, here is the cooking tutorial for sourdough bread. So I have the 227 grams of starter and 397 grams of water in here. And I have found the best way to mix it is just to do a hand mix. So you just go and do like such. You just want to make sure that every little bit is dissolved in the water. Like that. And then we will add our flour and the teaspoon of malt powder. Okay, so I have added the 602 grams of bread flour, which you should always use bread flour because it's a mix of flours. It's like it's a wheat flour, a hard wheat flour, and a barley flour. It does better for baking bread. And then I added the diastatic dry malt powder, which that's what it looks like, the one I got from Amazon. I can't remember how much it was, but it just, the recipe says it helps with the browning and helps with the rise. I only add a teaspoon. I don't know if it really does help or not, but I do still add it. It's optional. So we're just going to mix this up. We're not going to do the salt yet because we are going to do a 30-minute autolyze to help the water hydrate the flour and give the glutens time to develop. So you just go in with your hands like such. And it is a super sticky dough. It's not like a traditional dough. And you'll find as it actually starts to sit and develop, ripen, that it's not like I was saying, it's not like a punchy dough that just like really super rises. And you'll need to use some water to make sure your hand isn't too sticky when you're working with it. At this point, there's just no way around your hand being sticky because you got to get everything mixed. Just kind of scrape the sides. Get all that flour off. Move it around, just trying to get everything incorporated. Moving it out of the way, sorry. I'm not a professional filmer. Okay, so for now, that is pretty well mixed. It's super thick. I'll try to scrape off as much of my fingers as possible. So now what we'll do is just cover it and let it set for 30 minutes and then come back and add the salt. Okay, so we've let it set for 30 minutes and now I've added the 18 grams of salt. So we are going to incorporate this. Now this is where I'm going to use some water and just slightly get my hand just a little bit damp. It's going to help with stickiness. And so I'm just going to incorporate this salt in. So I'm just going to, so you can see that's not as sticky now, but my hand is a little bit wet. I'm just going to fold that salt in. I started getting a little tiny bit of a rise. I use kosher salt. You don't have to use kosher salt. That's just what I have in the house. So I've really got to kind of work it in since it's a little coarse. You can tell that it got sit for that 30 minutes, really started to develop up the gluten a little bit. It's starting to get a little more stretchy, which is what we wanted. So now that salt is all mixed in good. So you're gonna let it sit. Let it sit for an hour to do its first rise. It's gonna do 3. I'm gonna put the salt there. Needs to. A little bit of pepper is in my salt. I don't want pepper. Dadgummit. Okay. There's another one. That's what happens when you have salt and pepper bowls. Okay, so now we're gonna let it set for an hour. We're gonna do 3 1-hour rises with stretching and folding in between. So we will come back in 1 hour. Okay, so that was the first hour. So we are going to do our first stretch and fold. So I'm gonna go ahead and get my hand wet slightly so my hand doesn't stick too much to the dough. See, it's not too stretchy. So you can do this with one hand, and it helps me. I just do it with one hand because it hurts my right wrist. But you only really need to do it with one hand. So basically, all you have to do is stretch, fold, stretch, fold, stretch. Let me get it up. Fold. Just stretch it. Fold. Stretch it. Just pulling it up and folding it over on itself. Stretching it, pulling it over on itself. Stretching it up, pulling it over on itself. And you're gonna start feeling it get pretty tight while you're doing that. And that's exactly what you want it to do. And once it starts feeling like you can't really stretch it, see it's starting to get, you can't really pull it very much anymore, that's when you're going to want to stop. It's pretty solid. So, that is our first stretch and fold. We will let that sit for another hour and do the exact same thing again.
you're not tall enough and you don't even have thumbs.
It is over there getting in trouble. Okay, so the next residence, so you can see that that little ball has done a little bit more of a rise. So we're gonna do one more stretch and fold. Wet my hand slightly again. You can see that it's got more give now because of that rise. So we will stretch, fold. We watch that in the oven. We watch that in the oven. Stretch, fold. Stretch, fold. Not gonna be able to do it as much. Stretch, fold. Stretch, fold. Stretch and fold. That is a dog here. Yeah. Stretch and fold. One more time. That's probably all we can get. It gets harder as each rise. See, it's pretty dense. Stretch, fold. Yeah, that's all we got. It's pretty dense. Okay. All right. One more hour, last rise. Okay, our last stretch and fold before we're gonna put it in the refrigerator for the night. So, see, it's done a little bit more of a rise. Actually, quite a bit. Stretch and fold. Stretch and fold again. It's not a whole lot of stretching and folding you can do at this point because you really don't want to mess up the gluten strands. See, it's just really I'm gonna be able to do it maybe one more time. Ouch. Yeah. All right. So, hi Winter. All right, so now I'm gonna cover it with some plastic wrap. Foil, whatever you have. I have a ton of this, so. Cover it with some plastic wrap and then put it in the refrigerator for at least 12 hours to 24 hours to ferment. That's where it's going to pick up the really good sour flavor. And then it'll have a rest and a final rise tomorrow. Ooh, that's shiny. Shiny. Looks like an eyeball. Before we bake it. So into the fridge. I probably will bake it around, let's see, it's 7:20 right now in the evening. I'll probably bake it around 9 or so in the morning. So it's probably going to be in there for about 14 hours. So that was nice. I'm not going to edit that out. It's real life. Okay, so we'll see you in the morning. Okay, so our dough has been resting all night. This is 9 in the morning. So now we are going to shape it into a ball and let it rest for about 15 minutes. And then we're going to move it into our Dutch oven. It's going to be pretty stiff because it's cold. I don't work it too much, but we're just going to just fold it over in on itself. Good morning.
Good morning. Vanna's in that cat food.
I know. Into a ball. I'm making a video for Jessica. Kind of roll it. Which is basically going to be the shape of our bowl. Okay, that's a good round. Good round shape. All right, just gonna cover it. And let it sit for 15 minutes. Okay, 15 minutes has passed. So the next step is just super easy. I'm gonna move it to our Dutch oven. That's what I'm gonna bake it in. So it's just gently moving to here. This has been just lightly sprayed with cooking spray. And then you're gonna cover it and let it come up to temperature. About 3 hours. That's it. And then in about 2 hours, we're going to preheat the oven to 500, and you have to let your oven preheat for about an hour to get really hot. So that's why I like to do this early in the day before it starts heating up the oven, heating up the house super hot. So 3 hours to come up to warm up, and it's going to rise a little bit, not necessarily rise up, but it's going to expand out, which I'll show you when we take the lid off and dust it and score it. So 3 hours to do that, but in 2 hours we will preheat the oven to 500. And I'm not going to take a video of preheating the oven, but so that's that. All right, so our 3 hours is up. our oven has been preheating at 500, so I've reduced it down to 450. So now I'm going to prepare our sourdough. So you can see that it has risen a little. It's spread out into the pan. So I'm just going to dust it with some flour on the top. Slightly. Just spread it. Over the top. And then we're going to score it with a razor blade. Now you can use a knife, but usually knives aren't sharp enough. And I just do a simple cross hatch. If you look online, there's like several different designs. People do like leaf patterns and all sorts of things, but I'm just not fancy like that. I just do a simple X on mine. Hi, Jenna. So we get our little razor blade, and there is a tool that you can use that you can put this in. It's a little harder to use since it's in this pan. I do have the Banneton baskets that I just haven't used them yet. If I wanted to make like a smaller one, I just haven't used them yet, and that would be if you were to bake it on a pan in the oven. But I like to use this because putting the lid on it helps to create steam. If you were not to use a cast iron like this, you would have to bake it on a pan and then use like a cast iron pan or some kind of pan and then pour hot water into it to create steam, because you have to have steam to create the crust. So I'm just going to take this razor blade and score it. Like I said, this is where you could go in and do like the really beautiful leaf work and stuff if you wanted. I am not out to make an artisan really pretty one. I'm just here to eat it. So it's that. I go back through it just to make sure the cuts are deep enough so it'll really expand. And it is. So now I am going to cover it, and I am going to bake it for 45 minutes. And then after 45 minutes, we'll take the lid off and bake it for another about 10 to 15 minutes. You want to use a digital thermometer. Make sure the middle is 210 degrees. So we'll check it after 45 minutes and go from there. Okay. Ooh. Steam. Now I'm just going to take the lid off. Oh, hello. And we'll bake for another 15 minutes. Okay, so I just took this out of the oven and want it to be at least 210, and we are at 211. So it is done. So I'm going to turn the oven off. And I'm going to go ahead and take it out of this and put it on a rack. I'm gonna have to put the phone down to do it, but that's the sound you're looking for. Nice and solid, crusty loaf. And there she is. It's perfect. It's hot. I'm gonna try to flip it. Ooh, that's hot. Eee. Hang on. Yow! That's the sound you want. Perfect brown. Woo! That's that. We'll let it cool completely before we try to cut it up. But there you go, start to finish. Sourdough. Smells so good. Now I just need a bunch of butter. Or what is it? Cheese and peanut butter. If that's what you like. Turn back in.